Coming up on this week's show, Silvia Violet is here, and she's going to be talking about the latest in her Love and Care series.
This is the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for avid readers and passionate fans of gay romance fiction. Each week, we bring you exclusive author interviews, book recommendations, and explore the latest in gay pop culture.
Welcome to episode 165 of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast. I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com, and with me, as always, is my co-host and festive husband, Will Knaus. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by our remarkable group of supporters on Patreon. A big thanks this week to Kim, Thomas, Mia, and Christine for joining us. We'll have more information on how you can join them in just a few moments.
Welcome everyone back to another episode of the show. We hope you had a fantastic week and had the opportunity to read lots of amazing books. I know we did.
Yes, we did. We wrote a shocking amount of books this week.
Which we will be talking about in just a moment.
Yes, indeed.
We've got a lot to talk about, so let's kick it off.
Yeah. First and most important, perhaps, we should wish all of our Jewish listeners a very happy Hanukkah. We hope you have a wonderful week celebrating and wish you all the merriest there. So we're back live on Facebook this week. We mentioned last week in the show that we have been actually running a little experiment by recording these episodes live on Facebook so people can get kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the podcast. We're doing it again, and we'll be doing it for the foreseeable future. How do the good people join us on Facebook?
All you have to do is go to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast Facebook page and either like or follow it, and then check your settings and make sure that however it's working at the moment that Facebook lets you know when we are live.
Yes.
I don't know how they do that currently,
There's
but
a little notification box on
the box. That's
in the header of our Facebook page where you can click to be notified of our posts and in particular our Facebook lives. That way you'll know when we start, because we tend to start somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings on that specific time. So that would be somewhere between 10:30 and 11 for those of you on the East Coast. And those of you around the world, I will let you figure out your time zone situation because the math will baffle me.
So if you are up and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Sunday morning, please feel free to join us on Facebook Live. We'll be sure and try our very best to say hi and answer any questions that you might have. Quick caveat, we don't feel that the live episodes are meant to replace the regular podcast.
True.
This is just sort of like fun for super fans to see what goes on behind the scenes. What we're essentially doing is we are recording our host wraparound segments. The audio. Well, there you go. Live, yay! The author. That was the word I was looking for. The author interviews are actually inserted in post production during the complete episode. So be sure, if you do hang out and watch the live video, be sure and check out the regular episode as well. Yeah. Once again, we are doing it every Sunday morning. If you'd like to hang out with us, please feel free to do so on the Big Gay Fiction Podcast Facebook page.
Yes. There was a little sad news that came out this week, although hopefully it is only sad for the moment. Lisa, who is one of our contributors from the Novel Approach, announced that she was going to be temporarily closing down the Novel Approach as of December 31st, with a few other reviews kind of rolling into January for some books that were already in the queue. Novel Approach has been around for 7 years now, but Lisa feels that it's time to take a little break and recharge her batteries and, do the all-important thing of reading a book.
Yep.
Which is so, that's kind of the central thing that the Novel Approach likes to do. She will continue. We're very happy to say that she's going to continue to be a contributor on our show to keep putting out her book recommendations here, even while her website is on hiatus. And very happy to hear that because I know she's given me so many good books over the time that she's been a contributor here and also from the Novel Approach in general. And I will say, as an author, the Novel Approach has been such a big support for me getting things out into the world just this past week. They hosted me on release day for the third Codename Winger book, which was, I was very happy to be with them on release day. So we wish Lisa all the best as she has this hiatus. We hope the novel approach comes back as soon as she's ready for it too, and are very happy that she's continuing with us for now. And you could see her So Long For Now post on the novel approach, and we'll put a link to that in our show notes page.
Yes. Now, as you mentioned, this past week was release week for a certain book. Do you want to fill us in on how that went?
Yes. Audio Assault, which is the third book in the Codename Winger series, which is a young adult cyber thriller spy series, released on this past Tuesday. The blog tour went on most of the week, wrapping up on Friday over at the Harmony Inc. Press blog. I was pleased with how it all rolled out. As much as I could tell with sales, they seem to have gone fairly well so far for a third book in a series. The thing that is still happening is through December 4th, through the end of the day, Tuesday, December 4th. So if you're catching this episode early in the week, you can still enter the giveaway that I've got for a free copy of Audio Assault, either an ebook or there's a grand prize happening to win an autographed copy of that in paperback. You can go to the link that I've put to jeffadamswrites.com in the show notes page. It'll take you to the information about where the blog tour was, as well as show you the Rafflecopter. It's kind of a treasure hunt that I've set up because each stop of the tour has a different question associated with it, so you can get entries into the Rafflecopter for the giveaway. So you've still got a couple days to do that if you would like to do so. I also went a little bit bonkers this week, as you well know. Part of the end of the blog tour when I was at the Harmony Inc. site, and I talked about this a little bit last week, is that I released A Very Winger Christmas as a free short story. The great team at Harmony Inc. Helped me put together the ebook really last minute. I finished that story, I think, around November 5th with the draft, and I got it edited and over to them, and they were awesome and got it through some extra editing and got it formatted into ebook. On Monday or Tuesday this week, and I actually forget which day it was, I got it a wild hair to do an audiobook version of it. So I spent a couple days recording the audio, reading it myself, and then mastering it to get it ready to go out. I've always had great respect for our friends who are audiobook narrators. Oh my God, that's a lot of work. The story was about 11,000, I think it's around 11,500 words. Took me 2 hours to read it, just to read it. And that was going back and for lines that I didn't think I read well or that I stumbled over words or whatever, I went back and redid those. And then I spent probably between 2 and 3 hours editing it. See, this would be one that I'd fix if I had to go back in the audiobook. Editing it down and mastering it to release it. Tons of work. I see how it's different than doing this show, for sure, because we don't always enunciate correctly here. We don't always go back and fix mistakes like me stumbling over the word editing. It's only the bigger mistakes that we fix here because we're conversational, and so you can get away with more. But I wanted the audiobook to be clean, and I get that. So mad props to all the audiobook narrators for doing what they do. And I wasn't even trying to act it. I wasn't trying to do accents. I wasn't trying to differentiate the characters. It was just me, the author, reading the book and trying to put a little feeling in the right places and stuff. But it was a great experiment. If you probably saw it go into the podcast feed earlier this week, because I used that to distribute it. I'm not trying to put it out on Audible or anything. But if you're interested in checking that out, I'll put some links in the show notes. And I'll even embed the audio into the show notes page so you can just listen to it from there if you want. But there's an ebook and an audiobook out there if you would like to check out A Very Winger Christmas.
In the Hockey Player's Heart, the feel-good gay romance by Jeff Adams and Will Knaus, hockey star Caleb Carter returns to his hometown to recover from an injury. He never expects to run into his one-time crush at a grade school fundraiser. Seeing Aaron Price hits him hard, like being checked into the boards. The attraction is still there, even after all these years, and Caleb decides to make a play for the school teacher. You miss 100% of the shots you never take, right? Aaron has been burned by love before and can't imagine what a celebrity like Caleb could possibly see in a guy like him. Their differences are just too great. But as Aaron spends more time with Caleb, he begins to wonder if he might have what it takes to win the hockey player's heart. Get The Hockey Player's Heart in ebook, paperback, or as an audiobook performed by me, Finn Sterling, wherever you buy books.
'Tis the season, and you know what that means. I've got Christmas books to talk about. The very first one, Jeff and I read an awful lot this week, so we're going to try.
It's kind of bonkers.
We're going to get through these reviews as quickly and efficiently as humanly possible. The first up is His Christmas Sweater by new author C.M. Valencourt. Oh gosh, I love this book so much. All the Christmas feels. Our first hero is Owen. He is a nice guy, and he's driving to Denver to, of course, spend time with his family over the holidays. Unfortunately, a blizzard strands Owen and a lot of other people at this roadside motel. So picture, this isn't like in like particularly urban area or anything. They're basically all stranded in it's like a wide spot in the road. It's like there's just not a lot there. Jacob is the manager and front desk clerk of said motel. And in the blurb for the book, he is described as a Grinch. I think that's a little harsh. He's really just grouchy about the holidays. The truth is that I think he's sort of like an M&M. He's a little crunchy on the outside, but inside he's a total sweetheart. Anyway, so Jacob is in kind of a bad mood because he has to deal with all of these stranded customers who are pissed off that they're in this motel in the middle of nowhere. But Owen decides that he's going to be the guy who's going to spread Christmas cheer. So he goes into the basement of the motel and pulls out all the dusty ornaments and crap that they've got stored away. And he festoons the lobby with tinsel and trinkets. And he makes it all lovely and sparkly and wonderful. And at first, Jacob is sort of what's this guy's deal? But of course, since everyone is stranded together, they end up getting to know one another. And he immediately takes a liking to this, upbeat Christmas elf. Owen also cooks a Christmas Eve feast for everyone in the hotel. I don't think it specifically states where he gets all of his magical ingredients. I imagine down the street there's a stop and go. So
okay, fair.
So to give you an idea of how magically in the spirit Owen is, he essentially goes to a gas station convenience store and gathers up all the ingredients that he can and takes them back to the motel and cooks in the little back room kitchenette that they have behind the front counter. And he makes cookies and food and gets everyone in the Christmas spirit. What I thought, now I usually don't do this, but I thought this quote from the book was particularly apt. So this is what Jacob has to say to Owen after they've cleaned up after all of the festivities. I mean, you just show up here one night with your dorky sweaters and your stupid gorgeous eyes, and you somehow manage to single-handedly transform every holiday traveler's worst nightmare, not to mention my personal circle of hell, into an honest-to-God Hallmark movie? Oh, and you happen to also be absurdly hot, kind of to a fault, and maybe the best kisser I've ever met. So that gives you an idea of where the two of them are headed. So immediately after he says that, they finally hook up. There's been some unresolved Christmas sexual tension going on between the two of them. And they finally sleep together, and it's, of course, wonderful. And on Christmas Eve, the plows finally come through. So now with the road clear, Owen is free to leave. And Jacob, unfortunately, reverts to his grouchy self. and is afraid to admit his true feelings. But Owen's not having any of that. He's like, no, this has been a magical Christmas for me, and I'm sure it has been for you as well. And we're going to be spending a lot more time together in the future, which they do because this is a romance and there's a happily ever after. So I really, really enjoyed his Christmas sweater. The title, of course, refers to Owen's collection, his traveling collection. He brings Christmas sweaters along with him.
It sounded like it from the quote, and I can only imagine that he must have brought perhaps a suitcase full.
And he forces Owen to wear one at one point. It's very comical. So I highly recommend his Christmas sweater by C.M. Valencourt. I recommend everyone check it out. The second Christmas book I want to quickly speak about is A Kiss Before Christmas by Ae Rycart. Now, Ae has been writing for quite a while, but this is the very first book that I have read by Ae Rycart, and I'm so very glad I did because I really, really enjoyed it. This is the story of Jack. He's sort of having a crap Christmas. Things just aren't really going his way this year. And one evening, after suffering through the office Christmas party, he comes home and there is a homeless kid sleeping on his doorstep. But before the kid can run away, he's like, well, hold on just a second. Why don't you come inside, have a cup of tea, because it's like snowing out. And he's like, come in, we'll wait out the weather and it'll be fine. So Rory reluctantly agrees to come inside. He has a cup of tea, and which leads to a sandwich, and then an opportunity for him to take a shower and get cleaned up. And eventually he finds a spot on Jack's sofa, and he ends up spending the night. Now, Rory is a nice guy who, through a series of genuinely unfortunate circumstances, finds himself homeless over the holidays. And of course, since this story takes place in London over the holidays, there are lots of British traditions and lots of British foods. They talk about mince pies an awful lot in this book, which got me hungry, and Jeff and I actually went to World Market and picked ourselves up some mince pies and tried them for the very first time. And yes, indeed, they are definitely yummy.
They are so yummy. There could be a second trip to World Market coming for more.
Anyway, so as Jack and Rory are getting to know one another, Rory learns that Jack has placed himself in a rather uncomfortable predicament. He's broken up with his boyfriend and has created a fake boyfriend in order to take some of the social pressure off of himself. Although social pressure being what it is, he's either got to put up or shut up. He's about to go to a holiday fundraiser at which his ex-boyfriend will be present.
Uh-oh.
So Rory volunteers to be said fake boyfriend. This, of course, fixes everything, well, almost everything for Jack. So they go on a Christmas shopping spree. Cue shopping montage. It's just so more holiday cheer, and we during a quiet moment in a coffee shop, we actually learn Rory's backstory and why he's on the street. And he is... What's really nice about this book is Jack and Rory are two very nice guys, and the tension and the conflict in the story comes from the essentially the inequality in their situations. Rory has literally nothing, and Jack has everything to offer him. And they both have to be very careful while they're getting to know one another and become friends and are becoming interested in one another romantically. There's a problem. Jack doesn't want Rory to feel like there's some quid pro quo situation going on here. He's helping him out of the spirit of the holidays. And doesn't want him to feel like this fake boyfriend situation is something that he has to do if he's uncomfortable with it. Rory assures him that he's not, and he goes to the holiday fundraiser. things go incredibly well. They they make Jack's douchey ex-boyfriend super duper jealous. So yay, they win the day. The only problem is that Jack has also told his parents about this new boyfriend in his life. So Rory's going to have to accompany him on a family holiday.
Uh-oh. I see trouble brewing there.
So they get in the car, but the storm gets too bad, and the car can't make the trip. So they return home, and when they do, Rory overhears Jack talking to his mother on the phone. Jack puts his mom on speaker, and his mom is, of course, worried in her mom-like way. And she's like, it's so bad you couldn't be here because we cleared out the stables and we got the West Wing all set up for your arrival. And Roy's like, what? It turns out Jack is actually part of the gentry, part of the horsey set.
The horsey set?
Now, I don't exactly understand the British social hierarchy, but Jack's family is a really big deal. They own land in like half of the village that they were traveling to. This, of course, sets up all sorts of alarm bells for poor Rory. Like I mentioned before, the like social inequality thing going on there. So it becomes too overwhelming for Rory. It's like they're from two different worlds, and he decides to pack up his meager belongings into his backpack, and he goes out into the cold on Christmas Eve. Thankfully, Jack wakes up in the middle of the night, realizes Rory is gone, and follows his footsteps in the snow because the storm is getting worse and worse. Nobody else is out, so it's very easy to follow Rory's footprints, and they become reunited and decide to spend the holiday together. Aww. So after that ridiculously rambling review, I hope I was able to get across how much I really enjoyed Jack and Rory's story. And I highly recommend everyone check out A Kiss Before Christmas by Ae Rycart.
Now, we also joined up on a book this week. There was a quickie 1 hour read, courtesy of Audible, that we came across.
Yes, we checked out Fred and Ginger, a short story by Isabel Starling. Like I mentioned before, Isabel has also been writing for a very long time, and this is the very first book of hers that we have read. It's a quick, sexy Christmas read. Mm-hmm. It's about Chris. He works at a bakery, and he essentially has the holiday off when his boss calls him. There's an emergency order. A famous celebrity has ordered some naughty cupcakes for a holiday party. So Chris has to go into work to the bakery and make some dick cupcakes.
But he's excited because it is one of his favorite actors. So it's not like he kind of begrudgingly went. It's like...
So he goes into work and makes like a couple dozen dick cupcakes, and he's about to deliver them when he gets run over by a super cute Labrador puppy named Fred. The cupcake boxes go flying, all of his work is ruined, and he's super pissed off. Fred's super hot owner is Robin, a guy that Chris hooked up with a couple of months ago. And at first, Robin doesn't recognize Chris for, reasons. And because this is a cute holiday story, Robin feels very, very bad about his adorable puppy ruining the cupcakes, so he volunteers to help cook another batch. So Chris, being the slightly naughty guy that he is, insists that Robin help him bake these cupcakes naked. With the exception of a leather apron.
Yes.
So they become reacquainted while Robin is naked in a leather apron. And things get very heated in the back of the bake shop. So I highly recommend everyone check out Fred and Ginger. We listened to this book There's an hour-long audiobook read by Gary Furlong. Now, Gary Furlong is one of our absolute favorite narrators. He's so dreamy, and the work that he does on this particular book is excellent. Super fun, super sexy.
Yeah, I loved it. It was just a nice little Christmas bauble, if you will.
A bubble?
A bauble. You know, a nice hour read.
And a moose-bouche.
Yes. And the thing... You really highlighted everything that's there. This couple is super cute. The setup is super adorable. As we listened to it, I really wanted the bake shop to be next door to the ice cream shop that Claire London and Sue Brown have in their shared universe. Put those two things together because they're both kind of adult oriented, and we would never leave that place if it existed in reality to go between the two of them. So yeah, definitely Fred and Ginger by Isabel Keating was pretty darn awesome.
Isabel Starling.
Isabel Starling.
Now, you also read some great holiday books as well.
I did. I'm going to keep the bakery and holiday theme going because, why not? With Ben's Bakery and the Hanukkah Miracle by Penelope James. You turned this book on to me because you found it and you said it's hockey.
Of course I turned you on.
Well, yes.
Continue.
That's not podcast material now, is it? No. You said hockey and bakery and holiday, and I'm like, yes, let me go buy that right now. This book is so adorable. I'm usually a fairly slow print book reader because that's my nighttime get ready for bed book. I stayed up late and ended up reading this at alternate times too because it was way too adorable. We've got Ben, who is a lonely former speed skater who runs a bakery in Boston. He's offering Hanukkah treats this year. He really wants to take a moment out from trying to, take care of everybody's Christmas fruitcake orders and Santa cookie orders and, express, the holiday that's important to him as a Jewish man. So he decorates the window for Hanukkah and he offers a week of Hanukkah treats. Boston is being visited by Adam, who lives up in Montreal and coaches the Pee Wee set. He's got a team of 12-year-olds who have made a tournament in Boston, so he's bringing them down to the city, even though it means that he is away from home and away from his slightly ailing father for the holidays. And his father also happens to be a rabbi, so there's been a lot of... He's grown up, in a very Jewish household and celebrating Hanukkah each year, so being away is kind of weighs on him a little bit. The cute meet between these two happens when some of the boys from Adam's team comes into the bakery on their way to the rink, and they kind of need some breakfast and want some treats. And they're a little not sure what these treats are in some cases because one of the featured things is, I believe it's pronounced Safgenoit. Apologies if I got that wrong, but it's a Jewish type donut that is usually filled with raspberry. Yes, like a raspberry thing. And the boys aren't sure what to make of it, but kind of, Ben sells them on the idea, but they've left their American money behind. And Adam shows up in the midst of this whole thing of they don't have money to pay, but they've already kind of eaten some stuff. And Ben's kind of like, it's okay, the first donut is on the house for, any international travelers kind of thing. And it turns into a whole cute meet, especially over the idea that Adam's not really sure about this lemon cream pastry that he's created, because that's not quite traditional. Anyway, Ben invites Adam back to the bakery that evening because he's getting some latkes done, including some very non-traditional flavors like eggplant. Yeah, exactly. You would not want that. Adam was not a big thrill of it either.
Okay.
An eggplant latke, that's hard to say, was not exactly on anybody's wish list. And this is the first point that we see the bigger issue that will grow up between these two is that Adam's really judgy. There's no two ways about it. He has a very set idea on how Hanukkah should play out and what it means to be a good Jewish person and following the religion accordingly. And he really gets judgy on it. And I think I might have slapped him if I were Ben occasionally, because, how everybody chooses to celebrate is kind of their thing.
But I'm sure he's cute, so he let it slide.
He let it slide for a while. The more it went, the harder it got to slide. But eventually those two do get past it, obviously, because it is a romance. One of the more adorable things in this book is the hockey team. These 12-year-old boys are really invested for some reason in their coach's love life. They are adorable. Imagine, you always, in some of the Hallmark movies, you get the cute kid who kind of wants to bring them together. Imagine 16 cute kids wanting to bring people together. And that's what this hockey team is. I don't think as a coach that the coach would allow this to go on, but within the realm of this story, it was so freaking cute. And there's an assistant coach who also kind of pokes that in the right direction, because the assistant coach and Adam have been friends for like most of their entire lives. And so she could push him in ways that even the kids can't. The other kind of element to this story is both men have issues in their sport lives. Adam gave up hockey going towards the pros because of his father getting sick. And so he kind of held his career back and settled into this coaching role that he has in Montreal. And not wanting to leave his dad and leave Montreal is another kind of barrier to him wanting to start something with Ben. Ben, as I mentioned, is a former speed skater. He had a ridiculous accident as a speed skater when he was headed towards the Olympics. We've all seen, if you watch speed skating, we've all seen those big pileups that can happen in short track. And Ben was under one of those and had his leg massively slashed to the point where he has a hard time even getting back on the ice to like do a general easygoing skate. But he helps, the whole team helps Ben get back on the ice. Adam kind of helps it. Obviously, all this stuff wraps up in a pretty Hanukkah bow. Are there bows at Hanukkah? I don't know. A pretty Hanukkah gift, and the two end up together. Like I said, I loved it. It was such a warm, easygoing read. I wish Adam had been slightly less judgy, but, it all worked out in the end. I will say that I looked to Jay, who's one of our contributors from Joyfully Jay, to see how she felt the book handled the Judaism and the Hanukkah elements. And she said it did a really good job there. So I'm glad to see Hanukkah represented well in a romance, because I know that's something that Jay looks for every year as she looks through the Christmas books. So I was glad to see that, and I'll link to her review in the show notes as well, so you can catch up on that. But I highly recommend Ben's Bakery and the Hanukkah Miracle by Penelope Peters.
Sounds good. I was really happy to see this book come up in my social media feed, because while we are inundated with Christmas books, there are other holidays out there at the end of the year. So I was really happy to see this Hanukkah story come out.
Yeah, I was too. Speaking of our contributors, we talked earlier about Lisa and the novel approach. Lisa's been kind of putting Gregory Ashe on my radar for about a year now with his Somerset and Hazard series. Hazard and Somerset series, rather. She was here just a couple weeks ago talking about the latest book in that series, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally gonna engage on this series. I need to check it out because I'm hearing all this stuff. Oh my God, Lisa did such a good job getting this book in front of me. The book made me vibrate. It was so good. Think of how I get watching American Crime Story and how tense I get. Mm-hmm. I can see this being that type of show on FX, that this story just rolls itself out, week after week, and I just get more tense as it drives towards its conclusion. In book one, the massive setup for the whole series, Emery Hazard is moved back home to Warreda because he's lost his detective's job in St. Louis. And he ends up with one of the guys who bullied him severely in high school, John Henry Somerset. Hazard's been hired in this town because there's been a series of LGBTQ hate crimes, graffiti, people getting hurt, getting beat up. And so they want a gay cop on the force to help kind of bring this to a close and find out what's happening. It's a particular concern for the local university because they want their students to feel safe on their diverse campus. there's a lot going on in Warreda. We find out not only are there these hate crimes, but there is a cell of essentially really horrible kind of militant, very right-wing kind of bigots, kind of white supremacists who live just on the outskirts of town, who generally cause trouble all over the place for the police. And so that's kind of like the real world kind of ripped from the headlines element in this story. And the twists and turns that Gregory puts into this, you think you know where it's going, and then it's like, oh, wait, there's another clue over here that's doing this and feeding into this. And I can't imagine like how he put all these things together and made it work so cohesively and so well, and yet be so shocking at the same time. And then there's like, beyond the crime itself, you've got Hazard, who has to work through his past with Somerset. Somerset was one of the trio of bullies who really ragged on him and several other students at his high school. Somerset pushed Hazard down the stairs in high school at one point, and broke limbs. And also that pact contributed to the suicide of a friend. So there's an extremely complicated past that has to get worked out across this book, so that not only can they work together, but they can actually live in the same town together and kind of make peace with everything that happened. Plus, Hazard's got a boyfriend back in St. Louis who's a bit of a cheating dog, and he's got to kind of deal with that aspect of his life too, and kind of put that to rest. All of this gets wrapped up in an amazing package that's extremely readable and so accessible. And in kind of the same way I went gaga for Layla Rainey's romantic suspense, I am all over this. Hazard and Somerset, I'm sure, must come together later. They kind of dance around each other towards the end of the book with a little bit of attraction, because there was some stuff that went on in high school. So I'm interested to see how that evolves over the coming books in the series, because yes, I will definitely be coming back to these because I need to see where this goes. I did do the audiobook, which is from Tristan James, who actually does Layla Rainey's Irish and Whiskey series and her Trouble Brewing series. And it's very clear that he excels at romantic suspense, because he's a perfect voice for this book. So I highly recommend Pretty Pretty Boys by Gregory Ashe, and I'll certainly be revisiting that series very soon.
Now, if any of you are interested in the books we just mentioned, all you have to do is, number one, go to the show notes page at Big Gay Fiction Podcast. We have all the links and all the information right there at your fingertips. If you choose to purchase those books through the links on our website, we use affiliate links, so we'll get a little bit of money, and you can help support the show. There's also another way you can support the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, and that is through our Patreon page. If you go to patreon.com/Big Gay Fiction Podcast, you can find out the information there. How as little as like a cost of a cup of coffee every month, you can help support this show. You get some wonderful little extras, things like getting the opportunity to ask upcoming authors questions. Jeff is already planning January of next year. We've got some great people coming up.
Yep, I just posted to the Patreon folks this past week about some folks that they can ask some questions from.
You also have the opportunity to have us send a thank you card to you. As a matter of fact, we just sent one to Australia. Who did we send it to? Do you remember?
Oh, goodness. It's one of those 4 people that I mentioned this week. Thank you all, by the way. It's rare to have 4 people sign up in a single week, so we're glad to have you on board. And that card is making its way to Australia even now.
Also, you get a special bonus episode every single month. If you are interested in checking about what we talk about on those bonus episodes or the back bonus episodes, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Big Gay Fiction Podcast. You can learn more right there. That is patreon.com/Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
Did you know that podcasts love to get reviews too? Taking a moment to leave a review about the Big Gay Fiction Podcast helps us with the show's visibility online. please take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a review. Your comments help other readers of gay romance discover this show. Thanks for helping us spread the word about the Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
Now, I've been reading books by author Silvia Violet for a while now, but it came as a surprise when I realized recently that we've never actually had her on the show. So we thankfully have rectified that problem.
Yes.
And we talked to her not too long ago, primarily about the latest in her Love and Care series, Painfully Attractive. That just came out. I think this was a lot of fun. We talked to her about a lot of different stuff, including her upcoming Trillium Creek MPREG series, which I'm really looking forward to. I think it's going to be awesome.
Welcome, Sylvia. We're so glad you could come to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So this particular week, you are releasing a brand new book called Painfully Attractive. It's the fourth book in the Love and Care series.
Yes.
Tell us all about it.
Okay. So I'll just start with the series in general. So the Love and Care series starts with Father the Groom. And I wrote that. I was sort of in a bit of a writing funk, not sure what to start next. And I wanted just to do something fun, no angst at all, not a heavy plot sort of book, just a fun, romantic, quick book. And I had never written anything with daddy kink before. And that was something I wanted to explore a little bit. So I wrote that book and was amazed by how well it was received. So Graham and Avery, the main characters there, needed a little bit more to their story, I felt like, because that was just sort of a quick novella. And so I wrote a second book where they're the main characters again. That's called After the Weekend. And then book 3 and now book 4 deal with side characters. Book 3, Demanding Discipline, is Avery's roommate, Sean. That's his book. And then the fourth book, Painfully Attractive, is Graham from the first book's son and Graham's best friend. So as you can see, there's already some conflict set up there. So on top of the whole, this is my best friend's son, Leo is the owner of a couple of kink clubs, and Graham goes to those clubs and knows the kind of things that Leo is interested in, which include a lot of pain play. So you've got the added conflict of, okay, he's dating my son. I know what he's interested in. I totally believe in no kink shaming, but this is my youngest son. So, and Ren's 22. He's an adult. You know, he's been on his own for a while, but obviously this is going to be a little bit of a hard thing for Graham to deal with. And also for Leo, the friend, to sort of work through, is this okay? Is it okay for me to be in this relationship? And Ren's, the son, is all for this relationship. And hey, I'm an adult. I can do what I want. We can work this out. And so they have to get through all of that in this fourth book. So
The first book, Father of the Groom, came out in June, if I'm not mistaken.
that is right.
And now here we are 6 months later with the fourth book.
Yes.
What is it about this series that has sort of captured the interest of your readers, do you think?
I think the daddy kink aspect, I think that's just happens to be a hot trope right now. So I think that kind of pulled in a lot of readers, and that is there in books 1 and 2. A little less of an emphasis in book 3, but still there, and won't really be there in book 4, though there is still this age gap and father's best friend, which sort of plays into some of that ideology. I think that's one thing. It just happened to hit when that trope seemed to be something people were looking for. And then I also just think these characters seem to just really speak to my readers. I think they really have enjoyed. I've written a lot of age gap stories, and so I think my readers look to me for that. And just this particular mix of characters seems to be good for them. Some younger characters who, are just a little bit, I guess they're a little more on the kind of bratty twink side. And then my older, more experienced characters, that sort of that contrast seems to have been something people have enjoyed in this series.
And not only your readers have enjoyed it, I think obviously that you've enjoyed writing them. I think
I have.
To go from a book that was just sort of supposed to be like fun and you wrote it real quick to turn into this like full-fledged series is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
How has that thrown off your writing schedule for the year, or what has this series meant to you in 2018?
It's actually been really good. It's sort of reinvigorated my drive, my creativity. So it's been a really great thing. I like I said, when I wrote Father the Groom, I sort of was in a place where I wasn't sure where to go next. I had a few ideas I was playing around with, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. So I didn't have a lot of things scheduled out. So it worked really well that this was something I then wanted to extend. And it has been a lot of fun. And I've met a lot of new readers through it. And that's been great for me as a writer to get that positive feedback and feel like, okay, this is something readers want. It's something I'm enjoying. So it's really perfect.
What did you have to do to get ready to write Daddy Kink? Was there research involved, or how did you go about getting the knowledge to portray that well?
Yeah, I did do some research. Definitely reading some blogs, some sites about how to handle daddy kink in a way that's consensual, that is, something that's happening between adults who are interested in this dynamic and this type of relationship. I think anytime I'm writing different kinks for book 3, I included pony play, which is not something I've written before. And so again, I did a lot of research. There are a number of BDSM sites where the focus is teaching safety, consent, how to do this in a way that's safe and enjoyable for both partners involved, or however many partners are involved. And I definitely like to check out those resources and make sure it's I have a bit more authenticity in that dynamic.
Now, you've written an awful lot in a lot of different subgenres. When was your first book published?
My first book was published in 2004. And initially I was writing MF and then MMF. And I started writing MM in 2011.
What made you I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. What made you go all the way and decide to do a gay romance?
Well, I had enjoyed a lot doing MMF menage, so bisexual menage. And I also really enjoyed writing from a male point of view. I often found those chapters that I did from the male character's point of view actually flowed easier and were easier for me to write. And so I was working on a multi-author series with Changeling Press in 2010, and I had written one book in that series, and I had a side character in that book who was gay, and I decided to go ahead and write his story, and that is Sex on the Hoof is the name of that book. I've since republished that with a different series title, just my own titles from it. And so I really enjoyed it. And at that time, I didn't set out with the idea, okay, I am now going to exclusively write MM or gay romance. But I enjoyed it. I wrote another one. It resonated with my readers. Things took off for me. And that's where I've landed, where I stayed.
That's a great origin story. I like that. Yeah. Who are some of your author inspirations?
Let's see, author inspirations. Early on, in terms of making me want to be a writer, Jane Austen. I fell in love with Jane Austen in high school. Mr. Darcy is still my number one book boyfriend. And Mary Jo Putney, she's an author of MF historical romance. Her books just were some of my very favorites when I first started reading romance in my late teens. And she was one of the writers that definitely made me think, hey, I would really like to do this. And then in terms of kind of later on inspirations for TJ Klune's writing, I love. He's just amazing. And, whenever he's an author that I read and think, oh, I wish I could write a book that was this good. And so definitely one of my inspirations there.
Very cool. And any favorite books that you want to shout out?
Let's see. So TJ's The Lightning Star Card and the rest of that series, Tales from Verania, definitely a favorite I return to a lot. Josh Lanyon's Adrian English series, definitely a big reread, re-listen for me. Some more recent favorites, Clutch and Bond from the Forbidden Desire series by Piper Scott and Virginia Kelly, also known as Lynn Van Dorn. It's a dragon MPREG with eggs series. It's just really fun and original, and I love it. And Lily Morton's Mixed Messages series, great, snark, fun characters. So those are some of my recent favorites.
This past October, you released an audiobook of one of your standalones, A Chance at Love. Mm-hmm. And it was read and narrated by one of our personal favorites, Mr. Derek McLean. Mm-hmm. He is the voice of the podcast, and I really enjoyed this book a lot. I wanted to ask you, as sort of as an independent author who self-publishes, mm-hmm. what goes into the decision to do an audiobook? Because for those mm-hmm. of you who are listening, it can be a rather time-consuming and expensive progress when you're doing an audiobook essentially by yourself. So I was mm-hmm. wondering what went into the decision, especially to do this particular book.
Okay. So definitely, part of the decision is budget, in terms of how many audios in a year. I did a whole lot of audios in 2017, so I haven't done very many in 2018, just balancing where budget goes. But I think in terms of which books, often it's just a decision of sales. If a book sells really well, then I will, feel like, well, definitely an audio for that seems like it would be the right thing to do. And sometimes it's this book is special to me. It's a favorite, and I want to have an audio version because I do a little more self-indulgent motivation. A Chance at Love, part of that came out of a vacation to San Diego that I took with my family, my husband and my two daughters. And in fact, the starting scene where one of the characters brings a giant container of cheese balls onto a plane and sits in first class and eats them, what came from a silly conversation I had with my 11-year-old. So it's sort of a special book to me, and one I really wanted to have an audio. And I loved working with Derek. He's really awesome. I love his narration.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this book a lot.
Yeah, he's very much one of our favorites, too. I don't think he's ever done something I didn't want to listen to.
Yeah.
Now, also this past October, you took part in a multi-author promotion that happened mm-hmm. during Halloween, and you released a short story called Love at Lupine Bakery.
Yes.
Now, I downloaded this story, and I read it, and I lost my mind. It was so good. I loved it to pieces.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Lupine Bakery and some.
Okay.
I from what I understand, mm-hmm. this is going to be the jumping off point for a new series for you.
That's right. That is right. It is. It is I wrote it as a prequel to a series that will be called Trillium Creek, which will be a shifter MPREG series. This will be the first time I've written any MPREG. I always like to try new things, shake things up. So I'm looking forward to getting further into this series. I'm hoping to release the first book in it at the very end of December, but it might end up being in January. So this world that the story is set in this world, they're humans and they're shifters, wolf shifters in particular in this story. And in the wolf shifter population, they have alphas, betas, and omegas in that sort of the standard trope of an alpha, beta, omega verse world. But they do not in the human population. But what comes up in this story and will in the later books is that there are people who seem to be human as far as going around in their daily life. They don't show any shifter characteristics, but they are people who have some wolf shifter somewhere in their ancestry, whether it's a parent or a grandparent. So their genetic makeup is a mix of shifters and humans. And as the shifter population begins to learn, those shifter characteristics can actually be brought out in people who seem human but have some shifter genetics if they meet someone who is their fated mate. So this is a world where there are fated mates for the shifter population. And that's sort of the dynamic that's being worked through in Love at Lupine Bakery. Finn, who's an Omega wolf, runs Lupine Bakery. So there's lots of scenes with yummy cookies and molten chocolate cakes and stuff. I love putting food in my books. And he feels this very strong attraction to a man who, as far as he knows, is human. And then as they spend more time around each other, things start to come up where you realize, wait, he's acting more like a shifter instead of a human. So it's a little bit of where that's going. The first book will, one of the characters will be the pack alpha, whose name is Silas, and he comes up a little bit in Love at Lupine Bakery.
What I enjoyed about Love at Lupine Bakery is that in a relatively short word count, you managed to kind of establish and explain a lot of world building without being I'm personally not a fan of world building. In fact, I hate it an awful lot.
That is very, very true.
But I think what you managed to do through characterization and situations that each of the characters face, you establish the plot points and the world that these shifters live in. And I also found it really fun and interesting how you sort of flipped the traditional alpha trope on its head in this particular story. He's sort of, how should we describe it? Maybe sort of reluctant alpha, first time alpha. Yeah, he doesn't quite get what's going on. I thought that was really interesting and a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I had a lot of fun with it and creating the world, and I'm glad that it works for you without there being too much focus on the world building and enough focus on the story.
Now, you've done a shifter series before.
I have.
This time out, what made you decide to try MPREG? Other than it's obviously very popular with readers, what made you decide to give this a try?
I had been wanting to do another shifter series because it had been quite a while since I'd written one, and that's something I really enjoy. And it was really just this year that I started reading MPREG, and I've read several series that I've really enjoyed. So I think just finding that I actually really like this subgenre made me want to try it out as I did another shifter series. So just basically a love of the genre myself.
Nice. You keep diversifying a lot. You did the Daddy Kink earlier. You're coming to MPREG this time. What keeps you moving around?
I think for me, I would just get too bored by if I try to do the same type of book again and again, I just lose some of that creative motivation. I need trying new things, new subgenres, new tropes or kinks or whatever, just to keep me creatively motivated. And that sometimes is a little hard because it makes it a bit harder to have a steady brand as an author. But I think for me, all my books are going to have a high erotic content and a similar voice, even as they shift from, a shifter book, a contemporary book, MPREG. I've done historical. I feel like there's enough of a unified voice there, and I need that flexibility to keep wanting to be creative and having the motivation to keep writing.
And we should mention, I mean, it's December, it's the holiday time. And while you don't have a holiday book this year, Will certainly delighted in last year's holiday offering. So for those looking for a holiday read, tell us what you've got in the holiday genre.
Okay. Well, last year's release is called Three Under the Christmas Tree, and it is an MMM Christmas novella, an established couple who occasionally will have a third partner. That's something that has been part of their relationship. They decide that they want to hook up with a third, and it ends up being more than just a hookup, and then develops into a relationship right around the holidays, with a Christmas party being sort of a pinnacle moment in the story. And then I also have Needing a Little Christmas, which is from a number of years ago, but the audio is more recent. Sean Crisden recorded that. And so that's a audio option, and it is whisper synced if you have the ebook version at Amazon. And then I have two other Christmas stories. One is Holly Jolly, and it's a short story with two college students, and there's some sweet ice skating moments involved in that, even though it's set in Baton Rouge. They do have ice skating in downtown Baton Rouge. I went to grad school at LSU, so I've done it actually. I've skated there. Strange as that sounds. And then my other one is Wild R Christmas, which is the 7th book in my shifter series, Wild R Farm, where you sort of get to see a lot of different characters come together there at a Christmas celebration.
Now, of course, we've talked about Painfully Attractive coming in December. You've also got this MPREG series coming right up here as we close out the year. What else is coming in your future here that we can talk about?
Sure. So there'll be at least two more books in the MPREG series, at least a book 2 and a book 3 coming up as well. One of those will be MMM. And so that's coming. And then also in 2019, I'm going to be working on a contemporary series set in a small town in Wyoming. There'll be some cattle ranchers, some small town store owners, an elementary school teacher, lots of small town Western romance. The first book is finished, and I had submitted it to some publishers, but I've ultimately decided that self-publishing is what I want to do with it. So I'll be developing the rest of that series and getting that out. Some of my readers may remember me talking about the book that's more erotic than it was meant to be on social media. That's this book, which I was going for a bit of a Western romance, category romance sort of feel, but it's, as my voice usually tends to be, a little more erotic than what you would get in a Harlequin category. And of course it's, gay and bisexual characters as well. So.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, all of that.
Small town and cowboys. Give me more.
All right.
That sounds amazing.
All right.
So where can people keep up with you online to follow along as all this comes out next year?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram more than anywhere else. I have a Facebook group called Sylvia's Salon, and I share teasers and ask readers questions like help me name some secondary characters and stuff like that there. So that's a fun place to be. I do have a Twitter and a Pinterest account if you're there and you want to follow me there. And then SylviaViolet.com is my website. You can sign up for my newsletter there and read excerpts from all my books.
All right, fantastic. Well, Silvia, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Sure,
and we look
thank you
forward
for
to seeing
having me.
Painfully Attractive.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to Silvia for joining us. It was awesome talking to her. A reminder that Painfully Attractive will release this Friday, December 7th. It goes on pre-order Monday, December 3rd, so we'll add that link to the show notes page as soon as we can get our hands on it.
All right, everybody, I think that'll do it for this week's show. Coming up next week in episode 166, J.P. Barnaby is coming out of retirement and is back with us to talk about her newest release, Saving Hannah.
It was so great talking to JP. We've had this interview in the can for a while as we talked to her back in September while we were at the Dream Spinner conference, and I'm so glad to see that she's back with a new book.
Oh yeah, it's going to be good. So everyone, please tune in for that. Everyone, remember, no matter where life takes you, the journey will always be sweeter when you have a book. So until next time, everyone, please keep turning those pages and keep reading.
For detailed show notes and links to everything discussed in this episode, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com. New episodes are available every Monday at all major podcast distributors. You can also find us on YouTube. I'm Derek McLean. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.